Hello, everyone. We are live here with the most amazing educator. I'm so excited to have her on our show. Her name is Megan Bova. She is a special education teacher. She works for the Pittsburgh Public Schools, and she is just like, guys, I'm gonna let her describe to you what she does, and you will see what I mean. She just is an advocate for better education, equitable education, racial equity. She's an advocate for culturally responsive education. She is, like, there's so many things. So we're going to dig right in today. And hello, I am your host, Robin, the Queen Educator, where we believe that everybody is educating somebody somewhere, but how we do it does matter. It is important to make sure that we are doing it with excellence and equitable practices. So let us get started. I want to bring to the stage my wonderful guest, Megan Bova.
Welcome. Hi, thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Say hello to the people. Tell them where you're
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having the opportunity to be here and speak about what I am passionate about. And I love what you said, that everybody somewhere is being educated. I think that's such a great way, because it truly is a good way to look at things, and as you move through this journey together.
Yes. And we know that, like, it is a ripple effect, honestly.
Yep.
We teach our students, what they learn from us, from what we do, what we don't do, really matters for the future of other students, of other people. It's just going to keep going. And so it's so important that we have these conversations so that we can figure out ways to do it better. Because honestly, Megan, I don't believe that our system has been set up.
I agree. So do things the right way. Yes,
exactly.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
And they hear me talk about that all the time. All my guests, the people who listen to me, I want to hear from your perspective, from your lived experience. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and that passion that has, like, come through your journey.
So, it's funny, because when I first started in education, I always was student-centered first, but I'm not sure that my center was. I always believed that all kids should learn at high expectations, but I don't know that I ever really, in the beginning of my career, isolated race. And I think that part of that was because I worked first in a school setting that was predominantly all white educators. And so all of their lived experiences were that of white people. And so even though they were all student-centered first, we didn't necessarily isolate race. Even though majority of the students that we educated, it was a approved partial hospitalization program, were Black males, we still didn't isolate race or even try to examine some of the things that maybe perpetuated why our students came to us in the first place. And so it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago, when I started working in the therapeutic classroom for Pittsburgh Public Schools, that I really started to isolate race. I think going to Beyond Diversity early on in my career really helped me to understand the importance of, especially as a white educator, of isolating race to support the growth of my students. And so about 6 or 7 years ago is really when I became very focused on isolating race and ensuring that that was the reason for me doing the things that I did. And so that's where it really started to dive deep into my practice. I surrounded myself with educators who thought like me and challenged my thinking, but I also tried to surround myself with educators who maybe needed a little bit of guidance and support in how to isolate race, because I think that it's important that you have to see that perspective in order to help get them to move towards a journey of being equitable. And so if you only surround yourself with people who never challenge your thinking, then you kind of become stagnant in your process of helping educators become more equitable. I think that my role as I became a trauma-informed resilience practitioner for education. In all of the course studies that I did, a lot of it focused on isolating race. It didn't specifically call out race, but all of the research that they used, all of the course texts that we had to read really focused on supporting our youth and our students that are marginalized, particularly our Black and Brown students, and how to, if we begin working as a trauma-informed educator and supporting those students, then all students will support all students, but we have to support our most marginalized students first.
Can you say that again? It's so funny. You don't even realize I'm working on, getting some things, my book out and all these things out. And I literally just said that. I said, if we focus on the marginalized students and people, everybody else will be better. Why can't people get that notion? And let me ask you this question, because thank you for sharing your journey, and I appreciate your boldness in it too. Can you tell me about how it might be uncomfortable to do that? And yeah, like for you and you as a white woman, sometimes I'm in spaces and people are like, I don't want to talk about this, too uncomfortable. Let's just smile and keep going. And how do you overcome a challenge of being uncomfortable with this work?
So it's easy for me because we'll just like in Beyond Diversity, we always keep it local, personal, and immediate. And my sister, I guess I understood the impact that race had on people, but my sister is married to a man of color, and he has two older children, and then now they have two children themselves. And so being uncomfortable is okay with me because I know that the work that I'm doing is impacting my niece and my nephew and my sister's stepkids. And so I'm okay with being uncomfortable and challenging thinking and being in situations where sometimes I'm the only one that's uncomfortable, because it's important that my niece and my nephew and then, my friends' children see that I'm advocating for them. And it's not just something that I do behind closed doors, but I do out in the open. And so it can be isolating and difficult, especially in the position that I'm in now. White people don't like to be uncomfortable, especially white men don't like to be uncomfortable. And it's caused some, backlash, or what, I don't even know if it's backlash, but caused a lot of uncomfortability. And I'm okay with that because I want my niece and my nephew and the children of my friends to see that when I tell them in my house or at their house that their lives matter, that my actions back that up. And if they don't back that up in my work and in my personal life, then those words don't really mean anything to them.
Wow, Megan, I have so much to say. What am I going to say here? First of all, I just got to be really real and honest. Sometimes I have to use people with your mindset and white women as an ally to kind of get pushed through some of this work. You mentioned something. You said it like, and this is uncomfortable. So I don't know. This morning, I was like thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm gonna have to be uncomfortable today for some reason. I didn't know it was gonna be on here and just really talk about the hard stuff. And I appreciate and I celebrate you for not like putting pride or ego or like what might look or feel good for you over what's really good for our children. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, how do we push people within their uncomfortability to show that it's going to be better? Just lean into it. One thing you said about your journey is that you believe that all students deserve to be educated. And how does being like staying in that space, even as a white person, I'll say that, of like, let me just be comfortable. How does that affect students deserving the right to be educated at high levels and culture responsive education? Talk to me about that piece.
Well, I taught emotional support for many years. And so I'm sure you worked in Pittsburgh Public Schools. So the disproportionate rate that Black males are referred to special education, specifically emotional support. And so what I started to notice when I received my students from their other schools is that, a lot of what came with them was they don't want to learn, they don't care about their learning, they're not, their behaviors are too bad, so they can't learn, just let them, appease them. So if they don't want to do it, don't have them do the work, because you want to minimize behaviors. And I got to thinking, well, that sounds ridiculously stupid. I did have, I'm not going to lie, I had lots of behaviors in the beginning when I would get students, because I believed in holding them to high expectations. I didn't care. You could throw a desk across the room at me. You still were going to learn, and you were still going to do the text dependent analysis that we had planned for the day. You aren't, so you can have your moment, but I'm still holding you to the same expectation that an educator would hold a gifted student to. We may have to take different steps to get to that expectation, and I may have to modify and support you a little bit more than I would the gifted student, but I'm still holding you to that standard, because unfortunately our society doesn't care what your diagnosis is. They don't care about your past life. What they care about is, can you do whatever it is I'm asking you to do? And so, even if you're third, fourth, and fifth grade, it's my responsibility. I've been tasked to hold you to a high standard, because that's where you're learning, when you're held to that standard. And so, it was not an easy journey, and it still is not an easy journey. People still don't want the ES kid in their classroom. So if they are achieving at grade level, I would try to push them out to the regular education classroom. And it was always a fight. I don't want the ES kid. They're going to do this or that. And so it's very difficult to shift the mindset of people. And so if I had them in my room, I was holding them to a high expectation. I didn't care who you are, what you came with. We can work through that, but you're still learning today.
That's it. I love that you said it. I love it. And it even connects to your story and your journey, and here, let me just go back there. Here's the thing. When you said your niece and your nephew and your friends, like, you realize, okay, these are precious babies. These are lives. These are people that I'm trying to support in whatever way I can to thrive in the real world. So, like, you have that heart for it. And I think that when people kind of see our children, all of our children, as the students in a seat, and that's about it, versus somebody who could be like a baby to them, like their child. Like, I want you to see this as if this is your child. I don't care if they don't look the way you think they do, think the way you think they should, learn at the rate and capacity that you think they should. It is our job, I believe, it is our job, especially our job as educators and special education teachers. I have my special education certification for that very reason that you spoke of, because I wanted to see more people have high expectations for our most disconnected students, or our students who learn differently. And I wanted to be the one to be in that space and say, hey, no, I don't care what anybody else says. Come on, give me all the kids that y'all don't want.
Yep.
Because I'm going to be, if I can't change your heart and mind around it, I'm going to definitely make sure I am an example. And so that goes back to your heart for your family and your children and your nieces, nephews, I believe, And so I appreciate your journey. I appreciate you pushing through that. What has been a challenge for you, like a big challenge for you working in the school system? There's lots. I've worked in PPS, and so I've learned so much. I've gotten so much theory. I've gotten so much practice of what to do and how to do it. But I don't always see us as a unit in the school system, period, in education, walking that out, where we say, we believe all students can learn. We believe da da da. And it doesn't always translate. That has been a challenge for me. What has been a challenge for you in that space? In the spaces of education?
For me, I think that the biggest challenge is, like, our actions don't follow our words. And so we talk a lot about in our district about being student first and being equity centered, and then the actions of those around us are not. A couple colleagues and I who you've had Dr. Rhonda Threed on, she shared with me the Chapter 49, Culturally Relevant Sustaining Education Competencies. And she shared that they had been around for a few years. And I'm like, what? What do you mean they've been around for a few years? Why don't we know about these? Why aren't these competencies guiding our work in our professional learning space? Because really the competencies are for educators to challenge themselves. And I'm like, why aren't these competencies embedded in all that we're doing in our district? If we really want to promote equitable classrooms, these should be our guiding. This should be the guide for how we do that. And so I think for me, the biggest challenge that I've seen is just that the actions don't follow the words. The words and the actions they're two different things. And so it's hard to believe that we really want to make a difference and create equitable learning environments for our students if our actions aren't backing up our words. And so it's partially why I'm going back into the classroom from the position that I'm in, because I just, I want to empower our students. And I'm not sure that the position that I'm in, I can really do that, where if I'm in the classroom, I can do something that empowers our students, specifically our young Black males, in becoming the person that I know they can be and that they know they can be, and not the person that society tells them they should be.
Wow, that's so, I put this up on the screen here just because I want people to see it. And it's funny, when I'm a Teach Plus policy fellow, and this is where I really learned about these culturally relevant competency sustaining education guidelines that can be supported. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really know these were out here. And as I went through them, one of my shows, I did actually go through each one of them with another educator, Candace, from PPS, and I was saying how, like, wow, there's a lot of things on here that I just had to, I didn't know this was a thing. And I have been pushing for this and coaching teachers on this, and and I didn't even know this was a thing. And imagine, I just feel like my life would have been a little bit easier. I would have some backup to say, hey guys, this is actually in other states and other places. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. We are pushing these out so that the laws can be shifted, so that this can actually become a law. There is pushback. There's always pushback because people don't want to be uncomfortable. And that's people, period. Honestly. I appreciate the way you answered that question, because you said it's around what you believe about your students, especially your Black male students, so that we can actually create better for them, leaving school, like in school and leaving school, so that we don't have to conform to the statistics.
Yeah.
That, okay, the pipeline to prison, like, it doesn't have to be that way, but because it's been that way, it has become a norm, and we actually have things in place to shift that. But if we really are going to talk about it, let's walk about it. I'm serious. I say it all the time.
Too.
Come on, let's walk with it, walk it out. And I do believe that people have good intentions, but I don't know that people are prepared to form and shift and change, because it seems like a heavy lift. And yes, it is a heavy lift because our system isn't designed. It's designed for what it's designed for. So it's easy to fall back into the comfortability of not doing the work. And these are things, you said it, what we center around. And it's not just about this, but it's about racial equity, because of the fact that it hasn't been about. We shouldn't have to say it, but we have to. We should. What do you think about that? Yeah.
I think that we have a system that's designed to ensure that our Black and brown children go right to prison or to poverty. And it's unfortunate. And it's working. That's why I say, even on Tuesday, my husband jokingly said, it's just local elections. And I said to him, but the importance of voting, that's where it starts, right? In your local elections. And that's where you start to see the change. And then you move to the bigger scale. And so that's why, I took my son with me, because it's important for him to see, like, you have to be the change, especially because my son's a white male. And so he has to, even though he's 3.5, I want him to learn first, the privileges that he has because of the color of his skin and because that he's a male. And so I take him. I think it's important for him to understand that we are the ones that will help to empower this change. And so part of that is using our voice when we see injustice, but also voting and making that change at the local level first to help shift the system. I have hope that it's going to shift. I think it's going to take a long time, and you and I might both be old with walkers before it does, but I do have hope that the system's going to shift because I see, at least the people that I surround myself with and the way that they are talking with their children and the way that they're getting their kids at a young age involved in understanding how they can make the change. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. There's definitely hope. I believe that we're further along. I think as far as like talking about it and getting people to be more aware than we were a long time ago. We may not be walking it out the best way that we probably could, but that's where people like you come in and I love what you said with your son. Like not all white males, not all white women, not all people who are not of color are being ignorant or choosing to be comfortable. There are people, there are advocates, there are allies to shift a lot of these things. And so I appreciate your mission to do, and I put a portion of it here. We can go a little into this and then we'll talk about your message.
I'm going to move I'm not leaving. I just have to, I don't want to.
You're okay. You're fine. I do want to, as Megan is shifting a bit, I want to just let us all know that sometimes we get into spaces where we're not necessarily sure about what to think, what to say, what to do with a system that has been built many, many, many decades ago for a certain purpose. So when you're breaking down that and you're building up, every little bit that you do does count. And so as Megan shares her mission, I want you all to be aware of it and how you can help and how we can, as people of color, as people not non-white and white, can have a part into being authentic, living life for a way that's about humanity and not just for what we can get and privilege. And there's many people who have a dominant culture mindset that aren't actually even white. And say, hey, I work here. Go ahead and share.
Well, that's thanks to the system that has, I always say we do a good job of making sure that our Black educators have a white centered focus, unfortunately. And that's just the system that we live in. And we need to work to change that so that they don't. I've been in schools where it's disheartening to see that some of my Black colleagues feel like they have to conform to this whiteness in order just to fit in. And it's not their job to change that. It's our job to change that as white educators, and especially as people who are in a position higher up in the district to change that. We can't just rely on our, Black and brown colleagues to do that. That's not their job. We created the system. We have to fix the system. It's not their job to fix it for us.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. You're just so raw and candid and honest, and I appreciate it. And when I think about your mission to do everything with an equity-centered mind and framework, I feel like that's a great message to send to people too. That I know that that's what you're doing. But as you said you think that the way you choose to operate and to work with an equity-centered mindset will help the growth of those who may be skewed. So say a little bit more. You can probably say it better than I did, but I really love this mission. It's super unique. So talk to us a little bit more about your mission.
So, it's so funny because I'm still learning. And I have two really good colleagues, Dr. Donna Irvin and Rhonda who really help push me to be uncomfortable and help me to see even some of my own bias, because I still have them, and I can be equity centered and still have bias because I'm a human, and because I'm a white human. And so I think what I try to do is, when I go and speak with educators, you have to, there's a way to do it. You can't do it to them. Otherwise they become angry. And then they again revert back to, well, it's just because they, are, I've heard people say, well, slavery was hundreds of years ago, so I don't understand what they're mad about now. I'm like, okay, but look at the systems that are in place. It's still basically like slavery. I mean, there's still systems that are in place that don't afford them the same opportunities as we do, or they do afford them the same opportunities, but there's strings attached to it. And so, but when you position yourself as a learner, even as you're teaching, especially adults, then it helps to support their growth, right? And it helps them to see, I even acknowledge when I'm training staff that I come with my own bias. I am not coming here to tell you that I am perfect and that I have this all right, but I'm coming here to tell you that together we're going to do this learning together. And that I think too, oftentimes, and it just comes into like that white fragility that people are like, you're calling me a racist. No, I'm not calling you a racist. I don't think that you're racist, but I think that you need to understand the privileges that we've been afforded because of our race. You may not have set those privileges, they were set a long time ago, but you benefit from those privileges. And to recognize that and acknowledge that and take that with you as you educate students and as you talk with your colleagues and try to be a disruptor of different things. I don't have it perfectly. I'm not perfect. I make a ton of mistakes, and I still am doing, I'm still, I would say, new to this work because I've only been doing it for 7 or 8 years publicly. And so, are you there?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know. Something happened. It went black for a minute. My screen, it's still black, but I'm here.
I was just going to say to that, I appreciate your openness and willingness to learn and grow as a white woman in America with all the privilege and with possible biases that you may be aware of or not aware of. I appreciate you in engaging in this work, these conversations, working with your mentors and leaders around equity work. You mentioned Dr. Three and Dr. Urban, and I've worked with them since like 2012, 2013, and we've been pushing at this work, and through the journey, we've tried to figure it out, like what biases do we have, how can we shift our focus, our mindset, our anger into something that is productive and powerful to actually help get people on board and help them understand. And you said the most amazing thing, in my perspective of what you said was, you've got to do things with people and not to them and for them and speak for, like, but let's explore this together, and let's decide what way and path we're going to take so that we can lean into the uncomfortability to get into a space that allows us to model for our children a better way. And so thank you for that. And as we close and as we get to the end of this, I asked Megan how she educates, and first of all, I love what she said around knowledge is power. And I'm going to put her message up here and you can expound on that a little bit more. But I really am, I love that. I think that just helps to kind of solidify what we're talking about here today about seeing things from an equity lens, and tying it into your story, your journey. And talk to us about your message you're leaving us with.
So even at the beginning, I always did like daily affirmations with all my students. And maybe I did them more for me so that I could believe in myself a little bit too. They help you too, But one thing I always would tell my students is that knowledge is the one thing that can never be taken from you. Once you know that 2 + 2 is 4, nobody can take that from you. Once you know the definition of a word, that sticks with you forever. People take your freedoms, they can take your life, they can take your house, your car, all of those things from you, but they can never take your power. And I speak to specifically my Black and brown males that once you have knowledge, you have power. And that is why there are systems that are in place and there's legislation that's in place to take that knowledge away from kids. You know, all of the legislation that's being passing about banning books and critical race theory and all of that, that's because we don't want our kids to have this knowledge, because once they have knowledge and they understand the systems that are in place are set up and designed for to marginalize a group of people, then they have the power to make changes and to say, no, this isn't right. And so if we don't give them that knowledge, then we don't give them that power. And so that's why I always, when said to my students, I'm always going to educate you. I'm always going to give you knowledge. And and I'm going to make sure that you know something and that you leave here every day learning something new. No matter what it is that you learned, you have one more thing that someone can't take from you. And now that you have that, you have more power. And the more power you have, the more you're able to make effective change because you know things. And so, to me, that's the message I give to my students. That's the message I give to adults when I educate them. That's the message that I share with my son, because knowledge is important. And the more knowledge I get, the more that I grow as a person, and don't stay stagnant in my thinking. And so just, that's my philosophy in life. Knowledge is power. And once you have it, it can't be taken from you.
Megan, I really appreciate that. And I have one more thing I want to ask you before we go, because how do we realize that? Like, how do we make this come to fruition? What is something that you do specifically, and maybe it is even related to voting and to empower your students to do this? Like, how do you equip students? How do you give them knowledge? Give us one example that maybe our listeners and viewers who are educators can actually do right now. They can start to do right now in their classroom, and then something you've done.
One thing that I always try to teach my students is how to self-advocate once they have the knowledge. And so we would practice ways like, okay, you see this happening. Okay, what's something that you know to be true? Not an opinion, but what do you know to be true, and how can you advocate for that for yourself, if it's something that you need to do for yourself or for someone else? Because that's a skill that I just don't think we do enough of. We don't advocate. And oftentimes, no, all the time, I feel like, when people advocate, first we'll isolate race. When our Black and brown women advocate, they're just angry Black women. And then it's like, oh, when, a woman advocates for herself, oh, you're just a feminist, or you just, and so it's looked down as something as like a negative. And so I always teach my students how to self-advocate, but using their knowledge to do it, and not just like their opinions or their feelings. That's important too, to include that in the self-advocating, but to use their knowledge. And so it's, we practice scenarios. We go through, if we read a text, we talk about, okay, if you were the character in this text, how would you advocate for yourself to make it better? If we read a biography, okay, let's look at the ways that this person advocated for themselves to make their life better or to make the lives of other people better. And so when you do that, that's a great way to empower your students and to empower yourself, because then you learn how to advocate for your students and for what's right for them.
I so appreciate that. Thank you for that tip. Thank you for those tips, period. Not just for our students, but for us to advocate with knowledge, because we have more power when we do it with knowledge. We can do it within our authentic selves. And I appreciate the mission that you're on. I appreciate your journey that you've been on, your willingness to grow and learn and be the best and most brilliant educator and wife and aunt and mother, everything that you set out to be. And I am in your corner. And we are so excited, guys, to just been able to go on this journey with my wonderful guests. And I want you all to connect with her. You can tell us how we can connect with you. If you want tips and tricks and strategies, one of the biggest things that I know that is an issue and a challenge right now is a lot of our students have been referred, especially our black boys, to special education. Many of them learn very differently. Many of them don't like the structure that it is because it's not structured for them. Many students, period, are not engaged. But Megan has such a great presence with students and ways to plan and to help our students be the best that they can be at high levels. And so please connect with her. And how can we connect with you?
You can email me. That's probably the easiest way, and I'll give you my. So it's just Megan MEGAN underscore Bova BOVA at yahoo.com, and you can email me, and I'll get coffee. What I love is supporting educators, and then when I support educators, then they support me. And so I think, we don't do enough of supporting each other and helping each other grow. And so, yeah, just connect with me. We can find a way. And I love learning from other colleagues. So if you have suggestions on how to be self-advocate, and then I love just sharing my knowledge with colleagues, because that's how we make change, right? By working together and collaborating and not staying in our own little silo.
That's right. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
We want you back when we have
I'll be back.
Class, we have summits coming up this summer so that we can prepare really strongly for next year. And I would love it if you would talk to a group of special education teachers or teachers, period, because you have so much to offer. We appreciate you. We thank you for being here. Good luck on all of your endeavors. You are a world changer in the education field, and I'm so glad and blessed to have your brilliant mind on our show today.
Thank you. I was so happy that you asked me. I felt honored, and I appreciate the work that you're doing as well. And so you are a change maker as well, and I appreciate that about you.
I thank you so much. Hey guys, listen, like I said, get with Megan. She says she'll sit down with you.
Mm-hmm.
You are not in this by yourself. We as educators need support with one another. So thank you. And just letting you guys know, we have every Wednesday, we have our Wednesday webinar where we do come and we just work on certain things that are tough topics like differentiated instruction, all those different things, culturally relevant teaching practices, and we go through like specific strategies on how to do that. We have this summer, we have our master class and our summit coming up, and I'm going to have some of these amazing, brilliant educators that you see me have on here every Monday, just so that you can talk with them and you can learn from them and they can learn from you, and we can together change the face of education, shift it on its head, and allow everyone to be able to create winning classrooms and winning lives so that we are better for tomorrow and thriving. All right, guys, say bye to my guests. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Thank you, guys. See you next